Good morning. I'm the Reverend Julianne Lepp, and it is so good to be with you on this spring forward morning. And like many of you, I tried to get myself ready to get up early and want to welcome you to our virtual services. Today marks almost a year that we have operated outside of our congregational walls. And it's been amazing to see how this congregation and other entities have adapted and grown, how we ourselves have adapted and grown. I'm very excited that we are starting reopening conversations to see, how we will begin to gather again, and thoughts on that and safety as hopefully things continue to improve in our community as people get vaccinated and rates go down. And if you can follow announcements on Facebook for that, you'll see reopening conversations, and there is in fact going to be one next Sunday after service. So I invite you now to settle in and enjoy this time together. And we are having our opening words from this author. Amid all the noise in our lives, we take this moment to sit in silence, to give thanks for another day, to give thanks for those in our lives who have brought us warmth, and to give thanks for the gift of life. We know that we are on a pilgrimage, here but for a brief time. Let us open ourselves to the here and now, to the process of becoming more whole, of living more fully, of giving and forgiving more freely, of understanding more completely the meaning of our lives here on this earth. Come, let us worship together. We have a couple of announcements before we begin into the rest of our service. As you've been hearing, much like NPR and other organizations, we've been giving announcements about our pledge drive. We are closing up our pledge drive very soon. If you haven't had a chance to pledge, or if you have questions, please contact me or the office. And every pledge makes a difference. And we know this has been a difficult year and appreciate all the support for UUC. We're currently at 213,766 of our 253,890 goal. So thank you again to all who have pledged. If you haven't had a chance, you can do that online or contact the office. And many of you have asked about what we're going to do about a thrift sale in the midst of pandemic. So we came up with a different idea. Tracy Hirsch and other folks on the fundraising committee have come up with the idea for a spring basket sale. And so what that means is that if you have items that maybe you picked up too many puzzles or books or something, or fabric or who knows what, during the pandemic, you can put it in a bag or basket, and we will sell that online through our UUC store. And the drop off is not until April 17th, so you have time to consider, spring is a great time to do spring cleaning. So consider what you might like to do. We'll have more announcements about that. And then our sale will be from April 18th, Sunday, April 18th to the 21st. So thank you so much.
Good morning. I'm David Hirsch. I'm the congregation president this year. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation. We are a religious community who commit ourselves to diversity. We hope to nourish human differences, those of gender, race, ability, sexual orientation, political values, culture, class, and religious belief. Welcome to all who treasure freedom of conscience in the search for truth. We promise to do our best to provide you a spiritual home. We extend a special welcome to our visitors today. We hope you follow our Facebook page. To participate in Zoom and receive announcements about special events and our religious exploration classes, please sign up for our weekly email. There should be a link in the comments section on our Facebook page where you can sign up. Also, families can follow our UUC Religious Exploration Facebook page. There are religious exploration classes for 4K through 9th grade and youth group every Wednesday online for middle school and high school students. We're so glad you joined us today.
Deep, or would you please join us in lighting the chalice? Deep calls unto deep, joy calls unto joy, light calls unto light. Let the kindling of this flame rekindle in us the inner light of love, of peace, of hope. And as one flame lights another, nor grows the less. We pledge ourselves to be bearers of the light wherever we are.
Our story for all ages this morning is called John Murray by Kelly Weissman Asperth Jackson. There once was a person named John Murray. He lived in England and worked as a minister there. The congregation to which he belonged took religion very seriously. They believed in life after death, and they thought that almost everyone was going to have a terrible, horrible time after they died. Just a very few people would get to live on comfortably forever. This belief was very important to John's congregation, and they didn't like anyone challenging it. Now, it happened that John Murray met first one person and then a whole bunch of people who disagreed with the idea so precious to his congregation. These new friends of John also believed in a life after death, but they thought that everyone would get to live together happily instead of a few people having fun and everyone else being miserable. After a while, John decided that this idea made more sense to him and seemed like the kinder and better way for the world to be. He became a Universalist. But John's old congregation didn't like his ideas at all. Not only did they not want to hear about them, but they told him that if he was going to have such ideas about everyone getting to be happy after they died, he would have to leave their church. A lot of other bad things happened in John's life after he was forced to leave his community. He lost his family and he ended up in prison for not being able to pay money that he owed. When he left England for the British colonies in North America, this was before there was a country called the United States of America, he swore he would never preach or work as a minister again. At this time, all the ships that people used to travel were blown from place to place by the wind. As John's ship was getting near his destination in New York, it was blown away to New Jersey and had to stay there until the winds changed direction. John went ashore to find something to eat while his ship was stuck, and he met a man named Thomas Potter. Tom had been hoping for years to find someone who would preach in the little lonely church that he had built himself. Tom held the same unpopular idea about life after death that John did. He was also a Universalist. Tom asked John over and over again to preach in his little empty church, but John had sworn never to preach again. Finally, Tom got John to promise that he would preach if the winds did not change in time for his ship to leave by Sunday. John hoped that he would be gone by then and wouldn't have to make good on his promise. But the winds did not change, and that Sunday, John Murray preached his first sermon in North America. Instead of abandoning his previous life as a minister, John went on from New Jersey to spread the idea of Universalism all over the American Northeast. For that, we have not only John Murray to thank, we also owe our gratitude to Thomas Potter, who knew there were people who needed John's message and worked so hard to convince him to share it with the world. We now have a reading from Barbara Rohde, Comfort Ye My People. I wasn't flattered when one of my daughters confided that she had thought of me as the big there when she was 3 years old. If I remember correctly, I was in the middle of a phase when I was hoping to reassure myself that I still had a fertile mind as well as a welcoming bosom. Now, years later, I can admit that the role of big there is a necessary part of parenthood not to be disparaged. At times, even the most mature of us want someone to dry our eyes, encircle us with welcoming arms, and offer us a cup of hot cocoa. I shall be forever grateful to my friend Ruth, who interrupted her political campaign to ride to the hospital, make her way past the folks in intensive care with convincing stories that I was her little sister, and reach bravely through the thicket of IVs, heart monitors, and breathing tubes to embrace me. Still, the origin of the word comfort means to make strong. As comforters, we often believe we have to take away the pain, only to discover that we are only able to help those in pain find the sources of their own strength. At times, it is our mere presence. I am here. I see your suffering. I care for you. At times, it is a helping hand. I'll vacuum. I'll wash up these dishes. I'll drive you. At times, it is a few words that put things into perspective. We're never quite sure what will truly comfort another or what special act will comfort us. We go looking for a big there and find instead that the excitement of a new idea lifts us from despair. I expect a little solace from my frail 90-year-old father when he called me in the hospital to see how I was. But when he called me Punky for the first time in 54 years, I felt the fidelity of that relationship. My narrow room was filled with memory and hope. Perhaps those of us who would be comforters could learn from the medieval scholastic who wrote so long ago, "Work, therefore, in what you do from love and not from fear." If we can put aside our fear that we might say or do something to add inadvertently to the suffering of those we would comfort, if we can put aside our fear of our own loss or the pain of our own pity, then love might find its way of bringing strength to the weak and light to those in the shadows.
Now is the time in our service where we share our deepest joys and concerns. You can share your joys and concerns in the chat, and I will share them in this circle of community. For those of us in Zoom, you will have a chance to share in your own voice after we're done streaming the service. I wanted to share a joy that Lydia Elaine Kilmurray and August Maurice Kilmurray were born to Jen and Gabe Kilmurray on March 12th, and everybody's healthy and happy. And if you, there'll be information in the UU Connections if you'd like to help with the carrying meals, is what I'm trying to get to. Also wanted to light a candle for Carol Johnson and Alan Jackson, who continue to be in hospice. If you get a chance to write them a card, or if you need that information, I know they appreciate your kind thoughts. I invite you to share your joys and concerns in this space. Marcia says thank you to Julia Brown for the crackling candle. You might hear it right now. I have one that I use in my meditations that has become popular in our little meditation group at 8:30. The joy from Allison that my sister's family welcomed a new puppy, Zeus, after the loss of their beloved dog a few months ago. Ralph says that he is joyful for the return of spring in so many ways. Sue on Facebook says that she is thankful for the beautiful weather, laughter, and music, and love all around us. Laura Getz says that she is grateful for the loving communities of which we are a part. And I would like to light a candle for Laura for her music that she has offered this whole year on Facebook and her Saturday night sing-along. I would like to light a personal candle. I recently was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and appreciate all the support that I've gotten already from members of the congregation as I figure out what that means for care and prescriptions and all those things. And just light a candle for this caring community. Thank you. Claire shares that she is grateful for my children and good health, concerns for loneliness, and trying to find my person. Thank you, Claire. This candle. And it's great to see faces I haven't seen in a while today. Thank you for joining us in service. I'm so excited as we think about how we will gather going forward. Light this final candle for all the joys and concerns too tender to escape the folds of our hearts. And if you'll please join me with the words that we close our joys and concerns with each Sunday. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, where are you? In the sky song, in the forest sounds your cry. What to give you, what to call you, what am I? Many drops are in the ocean, deep and wide. Sunlight bounces off the ripples to the sky. What to give you, what to call you, who am I? I am empty, time flies from me, what is time? Dreams eternal, fears eternal, haunt my heart. What to give you, what to call you, oh my God. Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, take our hearts. Take our breath and let our voices sing our parts. Take our hands and let us work to shape our hearts.
Now we'll have a reading from Nate Otto.
Speaking the Language of the Living Tradition by Elizabeth Ketchum. I grew up as a heavily committed eldest child of an American Baptist minister in the 50s. Committed, that is, to self-preservation, staying out of trouble with our small town and my family, and having fun within safe parameters, namely church activities. I never felt particularly committed to doctrine, never totally bought the idea of virgin birth or resurrection, or miracles or Trinity or other supernatural religious concepts, though I never openly admitted this either. It seemed to me that it didn't matter much whether these things really happened or not. Wasn't the whole point of Christianity the teachings of Jesus? Wasn't that the miracle? So I faked it a bit. I talked a good game, gave the impression of a devout young woman, all because I loved my parents and siblings dearly, and they seemed to believe this stuff. I never revealed to them my own questions because I didn't want to be separated from my family. I could see that they really were devoted to the teachings of Jesus, not just the trappings, and that was the important thing to me. What this created in my life was an interesting blend of preferences and problems. I avoided language which talked about saving souls or conversion or bloody sacrifice or subservience, ideas which really didn't seem to resonate with the teachings of Jesus. During a stint as an American Baptist home ministry missionary in Denver, I began to feel strongly that saving souls meant providing after-school activities for kids, a food bank, optometric services, job opportunities, friendship, and acceptance. Conversion for me wasn't a blinding experience on the road to Damascus, but a gradual understanding of what I believed and was willing to commit to. Bloody sacrifice seemed as senseless as the war in Vietnam, which was itself a bloody sacrifice of young men, some of them my friends. Subservience? Well, resentment by the subservient seemed to be its outcome. As a Unitarian Universalist, first a layperson, now a minister, I often chose metaphors to express my ideas of God. I love Brian Wren's hymn, Bring Many Names, in Singing the Living Tradition, number 23, with its loving metaphors, God as mother, father, aging, young, living, being. But I don't only use human metaphors for God. For me, God is cosmos, nature, universe, power beyond human power. For me, Trinity is too few manifestations of the divine. I keep thinking there's a sermon title in there somewhere, 3 is too few. Attending a United Methodist seminary, ILIF in Denver, gave me a chance to improve my skills in translating, for I had decided by then that a Unitarian Universalist needs to be religiously bilingual, able to speak religious language freely, understanding others whose dialect or language is somewhat different, accepting the difference, not needing to hear only UUEs. If we are a pluralistic faith, we need to be pluralistic in our understanding and acceptances and capabilities. I remember when my best childhood friend told me that she used to think God's name was Andy because of the old rhyme we often sang in church. Andy, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me his own, and small children have been known to intone, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. I like that. My buddy Andy shares his garden with me, the garden of the universe, of Whidbey Island, of cats and eagles and flowers and trees. Though my Father who art in heaven is named Merit, it's okay if someone else's is Howard. This is from the blog, Miss Kitty's Saloon and Roadshow.
So this morning we are exploring one of the sources of Unitarian Universalism. Last Sunday, Reverend Virginia Woolf shared why she is a Unitarian Universalist Buddhist. And while I don't identify specifically as a UU Christian, like many, I grew up in that tradition. But within our walls, our extended walls, as our virtual services are, we have people who come from many traditions, Judaism and secular traditions, and so many more. And so it's really important that we explore the traditions that people explore within Unitarian Universalism. There is a classic UU joke that goes, Universalists think that God is too good to send them to hell, whereas Unitarians think they are too good for God to send them to hell. Did that make sense? Let's see. Universalists think that God is too good to send them to hell, whereas Unitarians think they are too good for God to send them to hell. I think that makes sense. All right. So universal salvation or universalism is the theological belief that through goodness and mercy and the love of God, that all people would be saved and that they would be forgiven for their sins and granted eternal life. And this is an old idea. When I was in seminary at Candler, and I would tell people I was a Unitarian Universalist, they would first say, well, what is that? And we would have that conversation. And then they would say, I'm a Universalist. I believe in that, but I can't preach that at my congregation. So, it's hard to have beliefs outside the system. We saw that in the story that Allison shared about John Murray. The fact that he was run out of England due to his beliefs and just had some really tough experiences to believe in love. And most Unitarian Universalist Christians believe in God, but not necessarily the traditional God as Trinity that most mainline congregations promote. The UU Christian God is all loving, as our Universalist forebears taught us, and a unity, as our Unitarian forebears thought of us. This God is too big to be contained in one person, one book, or one tradition, or one time in history. To UU Christians, Jesus is an inspiration and his teachings profound, possessing a divine spark that is born in all of us and can be cultivated all our long lives. And I love this story about Hosea Ballou. He was a historical Universalist, and it's told in Richard Gilbert's The Prophetic Imperative. So one afternoon, Hosea Ballou was riding the circuit. And so if you don't know what a circuit rider is, they would go to different congregations and bring the good news, as they called it. And he was riding the New Hampshire hills with a Baptist minister. And they were arguing, supposedly, their horses beside each other. They were arguing theology as they traveled. At one point, the Baptist looked over and said, "Brother Ballou, if I were a Universalist and feared not the fires of hell, I would hit you over the head and steal your horse and saddle and ride away. And I would still go to heaven." Hosea Ballou looked at him and said, "Ha! If you were a Universalist, the idea would never occur to you." So the Universalists arose out of a response to the Calvinist belief that all of humanity, except a few chosen, were condemned to the fires of hell for all eternity. And that's a scary concept when you're little. I like how the story of John Murray avoided all mention of that. Many of us who grew up with a lot of that language, it can be very traumatizing. And the Universalism, really looks that the people are redeemable. Hosea Ballou, that you heard about in this story, spent his whole ministry refuting that notion. And he was called an ultra-Universalist, someone who believed that everybody, no matter what, would be returned to God. So Reverend Scott Alexander said, "In a world of so much hatred and violence, we need a religion that proclaims the inherent worth and dignity of every person. In a world with so much brutality and fear, we need a religion that seeks justice, equity, and compassion in human relations." And I think, we saw in these years and months, where violence and not respecting the lives of others or the dignity of others leads to violence against people of color, LGBTQ people, and many hurt hearts and hurt institutions. Universalism rejects fear-based religion, eternal hellfire and damnation, and that the concept of a sinner in the hands of an angry God. Humanity is not worthless or low as worms. This does not mean that there is not evil in the world, but that we are redeemable. And I think this concept has had a huge impact on who we are now as 21st century Unitarian Universalists. As our theology kept opening to different sources, and when you can sit in a UU congregation and be a pagan, a Buddhist, a Christian, or a secular person, that universalism touches us all. It touches us in the idea that when I do a baby dedication, we acknowledge that that baby was born right the first time. I don't have to put water on its head to say, "Oh, you're okay now," because we put water on your head. And instead, we celebrate with that family that this blessing is among us and that these beautiful children will grow up and that we will support their development as people. And universalism is not a new theological concept. It started with Origen in 2 CE and continued on to James Raleigh in the 1700s. And as we heard, it came to America in the late 1700s with John Murray. Unitarian Universalists have long struggled with orthodox roots. What do we do? How do we remodel? How do we reconstruct and engage with all of this? And I wanted to share a prayer and that a local person shared with me. And that is Mike Henry. You might know him as the person who is on the street quite often with Chippewa Valley Homeless Ministry. He worked with sex workers and or people in Chicago, and he worked in Guatemala, and he worked now to provide people dignity and justice and worth. Instead of saying, well, you got to pray to Jesus to get a sandwich, or you would be okay if only you give your soul. Instead, he's like, hey, you're loved. Here's some stuff. So I love this. It kind of mirrors the song that we heard earlier from Ken. Mother, Father of the 2 million incarcerated in the U.S., of the millions of homeless in shelters and on the streets. Mother, Father of the millions of people who labor in sweatshops and fields so that people in every country may enjoy food, clothes that are produced by their hands, even as these workers labor without food, without clean water and basic sustenance. Mother, Father, who lives in all of us and seeks justice and loves their neighbors, the suffering and the poor and the oppressed as themselves, and serve you. Mother and Father, whose name is taken in vain by those who are called to ministry and claim to be Christian, but build monuments to God in the form of prosperity instead of justice. We ask that you be with us today as we are with people regardless of gender, religion, and sexual preference, when they promote and regardless of where we come from. And all those whose tireless work with no rewards for themselves from the grip of poverty, sickness, violence, and illiteracy, and all other forms of exploitation, let your kingdom come. In your kingdom, our churches, temples, synagogues, and mosques will abandon using morality as a battering ram against others. And we will use it as the moral conscience of a nation in pursuit of liberation, justice, and peace for all. For in your kingdom, we work to bring equality to all and pursue a living and simple life so that others may simply live. Amen. This was a very different prayer than I grew up with. And I want to lift it up, that Christianity continues to evolve, just as Unitarian Universalism evolved. And there are many progressive Christians among us in our congregation and in our community that we partner with. And the idea that we are all connected and that we are doing the work of good is a part of that love that never gives up. If we equate love with the embodiment of a higher being, if we equate love with the actions of feeding the poor, I am enamored of that transcendentalist view that we all have a divine spark within us. Just like Peter Mayer said, everything is holy now. And so how we treat our planet and each other is so important. My views differ from the predominantly powerful and all-knowing deity that was in my childhood church. I can't believe that an all-powerful God would also be a loving God, because in the way I view the universe, a loving and all-powerful God would not stand back with the horrors of the world that we encounter every day. And so I'm a panentheist, and I'm influenced by universalism. I tend to think of the sacred as something we cooperate with that works in our lives. And, we all have many different beliefs, but we are touched by love's presence. And when I have felt an intense grief, I have felt accompanied by love. When my mother was in her last moments and we turned up the music of the stupid station, it was in the in the hospital room, but there was this moment of sacredness and being accompanied by love. When I walk in nature, when I feel that connection to the holy, when I hear my child's first cry at birth, I wonder how different our society would be if, regardless of gender orientation or religion, every pulpit, every place of sacred gathering proclaimed in song that you are inherent and worthy. How much damage has been done with the idea of original sin. I know I have spent most of my life trying to feel good enough, whole enough, beautiful enough, strong enough, and there are so many that are told they are not enough, and that is, I think, one of the most important messages of UUism, is that we say, hey, and I love saying it again, you were born right the first time, and you are loved, and that you are sacred. And yes, I do believe that the divine spark is in every life, and that's not always easy when people commit harm, and we struggle with these beliefs in our, as people, people say, well, shouldn't Hitler go to hell? I don't know. I don't believe that, but it's, the thing is that we have the right to determine what is true for us. And this history of Christianity, where Jesus tells us to love our neighbor as ourselves, he walks with the women at the well, sits with the prostitutes, feeds the hungry, clothes the poor, and doesn't ask them to sign an affidavit of how much money they make or build a big monument to his glory. He just asks us to be kind. And I think, what a great message. And I think when we ignore our love and our connection with each other, that seems like hell to me. I know being separated from everybody for a year has been really hard for many. And trying to find those connections and that love that supports us feels sacred. I hope that you find something that gives you hope regardless of what you believe. Reverend Scott Alexander said, in a world with so many persons abused and neglected, we need a religion that calls us to accept one another and encourage one another to spiritual growth. So whether you're a Buddhist Christian, whether you're a secular Jewish person, whatever your beliefs are, we can learn and grow, and that's part of our journey. The etymology of the word religion means that which binds us together. Unitarian Universalism is a religion not because we have a certain set of beliefs or hold to certain practices. Unitarian Universalism is a religion because we are bound together not by creed but by love, and that's something that we say each service. Love is the spirit of this church. And so I invite you to lean into the mystery, Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, hear my cry. And if you don't pray, that's fine. Meditate. If you have things that hold you, like Psalms or poetry or whatever it is, these have been difficult times, and we are looking towards spring and the light and towards love. And may you all be held today. Amen. Thank you. And we're now going to hear from Ken Brown, who is representing our 50/50 Share the Plate recipient. Speaking of wonderful ideas to help our community, he's going to tell a little bit of his story, and we'll hear from him now.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Really excited to be here. I've liked what I heard this morning, so it's really put a smile on my face. My name is Kyle Brown, and I'm on the board of directors with Roundtable Revival. Roundtable Revival has a vision of bringing everyone to the table to create positive, supportive recovery and reentry solutions for persons who have returned to the community after a period of incarceration in jail or prison. And what I bring to this organization is lived experience. I've battled addiction for about 20 years. Today I'm 14 months sober. I have my kids living at home with me. girlfriend, 2 dogs, and life is really good, but it was a challenge, extremely challenging to get here. And that's why I really think this organization that we've put together is important for our community. Some of the things that I've faced re-entering in the community, just the challenges of, it's starting over. I don't know if a lot of you are aware that typically people end up in jail. By the time they end up in jail or have broken the law, they're probably at like the peak of their addiction. They're pretty deep into it. So they go to jail or prison, and they get out, and it's almost like being born again. You're just clueless because your mind was only operating in one way the years leading to going to jail. And that's something I think some people don't understand. The smallest, in that time, you lose friends, you lose your mind, you lose your soul, really, is what happens. Drugs just take everything over. And, I can tell you that firsthand. So getting out, trying to do normal things like get a job, find a place, those become extremely challenging. The fact is, most of the landlords around here will not rent to people with conviction history, especially if there's drug-related charges. Now, as I've been a part of some of the new projects that some of the organizations in the community are working on, I've got to hear their sides of the story. And it's just, there's a lot of people that are without housing right now, and that's no secret. But other things that I faced, so I'll just explain. When I got out, I couldn't find a place at all. Myself, my 9, 10, and 14-year-old daughter, and my girlfriend, we were all living in a 1-bedroom under the name of my friends. He had, extended a hand, and I got lucky. We had nowhere. So this was all we had. We made it work. But other challenges like getting a job, I had lost my driver's license. So that was a challenge in itself. Not only that, I didn't have a car. So just the whole job searching process is like, well, why would I get a job if I'm not going to be able to get there? And that's what I see a lot of times happen with people coming out now is they just, the motivation's gone. Well, yeah, sure, there's jobs available in our community, but how am I going to get there? I know, something that would have helped me, even if I could have just gotten, maybe a ride to work for the first couple of weeks until maybe I could meet somebody and they could, ride share. So that's actually, I've been doing that a little bit. I've helped a couple gentlemen get to work. They got jobs through the temp service, and from there, it worked beautifully. So, yeah, those are just some of the struggles that I had. Let me see. Housing, jobs, and typically you're going to find the jobs are going to be, manufacturing, production jobs, and there's nothing wrong with that. Today I'm in school, so I don't have to work in this careers, because I don't know, it's really mind numbing. I tried Menards, it's not for me, but I'll do what I have to support my family. So yeah, I just I wanted to share with you my experience of re-entry, and that's all I have really to say about that. So I hope you guys would please join us as volunteers and financial supporters, as together we extend hope and support to those who are re-entering our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. With gratitude for the abundance in our lives, we give to help people in need and support the work of this congregation. And part of that is our 50-50 Share the Plate recipient for March, which is the Roundtable Revival. And you can find out more about that online. They have a Facebook page, and some of what Kyle mentioned as far as helping people into re-entry. You can donate online at uueauclair.com or text to give at 84321. And just a reminder, you can turn in your pledge. So we'll be closing that very soon. The offering will now be given and gratefully received. Thank you so much. Now we'll hear the chalice extinguishing from the autos. Yay.
Please join us at home with extinguishing your chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Our closing words are by Dawn Sky Cooley. Here may you know that you are lovable and that indeed you are loved. And may you carry that love out into the world as a blessing. For those of you watching from our Facebook live stream, I'm so glad you've joined us today. If you'd like to get information on how to join services in Zoom, you can fill out the visitor link in the Facebook comments. Those attending in Zoom, we will take a brief moment to share joys and concerns or share names that you might not have shared during service, and then we will move into our breakout rooms. Go in peace, go in love.